Hey, hello again, everyone. Welcome to our live webinar today, where we will present to you about the Masters in Environmental and Social Change program. We are very excited to have this panel with us today. So I know it's we are getting into the holiday mode, so we really appreciate you all spending 1 hour with us this Wednesday late morning. So before we go into the presentation, I would love to introduce our panel, and I will ask each of our panelists to, talk a little bit about you, who you are, and what do you do. Before we go into Jay, I will tell you my name is Michaela Vikramasinghe. I'm the Graduate Studies Recruitment and Training Officer. And I will also be the moderator of the panel a little bit later today. So I'll ask the MESC current program chair, Dr. Jay Maillet, to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi everybody. I recognize a lot of names in our list of attendees, so thanks for coming. Appreciate everybody taking the time out. My name is Jay Maya. I'm the current MESC program chair. I'm also an instructor in the Department of Geography.
Nora, would you like to go next? Sorry.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Nora Casson. I'm a faculty member in the Department of Geography, and I have supervised a number of MESC students, and I teach one of the core courses in the program. Research in my group that we do with graduate students, undergraduate students, and others is largely about how the things that humans do on the landscape affects water and water quality of lakes, wetlands, and streams.
Wonderful. Thank you, Nora. Wolf, would you like to go next?
Hey, I'm Wolf. I am a graduate of U Winnipeg, both an undergrad and a master's. I've been employed now for about a year and a half. I have my degrees in chemistry, geography, and then I also have the MESC master's. And now I'm employed at Los Alamos National Lab. This is a famous lab in the US. If you saw Oppenheimer, this is where all of that happened. And here I am responsible for operating the Perseverance rover on Mars. And in addition to doing operations, I also do science work that I can talk more about later. So yeah, now I'm employed full-time on the Mars mission.
Thank you. Anas?
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Anas and I'm currently working at the University of Manitoba as a research project manager. I'm also an alumnus of the MESC program. And yeah, my undergrad training was in law. And then I worked in a think tank on public policy. So I look forward to talking about that and how I entered into this space and how exciting it has been for me. Yeah, thank you.
Wonderful. So you met all a wonderful panel of scientists. I am going to share the presentation, and if you can bear with me for a second. Okay. I will pass on the presentation to Jay to start.
Yeah, thanks, Michaela. Yeah, just a really quick acknowledgement just to acknowledge the University of Winnipeg, which most of us, I think, are on currently, are on Treaty 1 territory on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Anisiniinu, Cree, Dakota, Dene, and Métis Nations. We can move on. So we've already introduced ourselves. So hello, welcome again. Thanks for coming. This is us, I guess. Yeah, I'm going to give a brief overview of the program itself. I'm going to ask that Nora kind of jump in whenever. So Nora undersold herself a little bit, but I think she gave a good overview of what she does, but she also helped to get the program off the ground, and she was the first chair of the program as well. So she's pretty ingrained in the program. So I'm going to give a little bit of an overview, and then I think we have some prepared questions for the panel. And then we're going to open it up to the attendees for Q&A in case there's anything we missed. So more generally, why graduate school? I assume these slides are going to be shared. So I'm going to try and just elaborate a little bit more than what's being on here. But to me, a master's program master's degree opens doors. It allows you to not only become specialized in your own discipline and gain some more understanding of a specific topic, but it also teaches you life skills, how to um, be on top of yourself in terms of deadlines and sort of like independent, work independently. And so like regardless of what the program you're going into or what your discipline is, those are all practical skills that employers like to see. But it does open doors. It allows you opportunity to, become qualified for higher paying jobs potentially. It is a pathway to PhD. So if you are interested in pursuing or staying in academia, master's is usually the pathway into that. And then funding, I mean, the reality is you're not going to become rich as a grad student, but there are funding packages often associated with grad school that allow you to pursue the studies without taking on a significant amount of debt compared to undergrad, where it's all sort of on you. So we'll talk about funding opportunities within our own program in a little bit. But I think some strengths that our own program hold in terms of a master's program, it's a relatively small program. I mean, UW prides itself on small classrooms and all that kind of stuff. And I think that really does translate to our master's program here between geography and environmental studies and sciences. So our cohorts are usually, I think our largest cohort was about 13. So fairly small cohort of students. So tight-knit group. You get to work, and I mean, there's strength in diversity, right? And that's one thing that our program really has as an interdisciplinary program. And interdisciplinary meaning we just pull from different disciplines, or our projects, our studies, our expertise, sometimes as well, often sort of transcend disciplinary divides. And so we kind of like put on many hats, and that ends up strengthening our work. And it also provides you with opportunity to work with a really wide range of individuals with wide range of backgrounds, wide range of interests, wide range of research, and even maybe a wide range of worldviews. So that can be really, really interesting and exciting for students. You're also going to be taking on, we'll talk about the makeup of our program, but you're also going to be working with a diverse group of researchers and supervisors that make up your committee. So faculty members, essentially, which again, are quite diverse in their backgrounds and disciplinary sort of expertise, which ends up strengthening your work as well. So as you work on your research and as you develop these competencies and these skills, you're being exposed to all of these different interesting perspectives and disciplines. Yeah. So we are a thesis-based program, master's program. So the course requirements are fairly minimal for a program like ours. There are 4 required courses, or you will take 4 3-credit courses over the 2 years. This is sort of like the typical pathway for students. We encourage students to focus on coursework year 1. And it's important to note as well, within our program, the Masters of Environmental and Social Change, there are 3 sort of like streams, if you will. So you could walk away with one of 3 degrees. So an MSc, Master of Science, an MENV, Master of Environment, or an MA, Master of Arts. And this, again, just opens opportunity for students with diverse backgrounds to come in and work on projects that are of interest to them. So the only difference, no matter where you slot in, no matter what your background is, everybody takes the 2 core courses, Research Foundations and the Seminar in Environmental and Social Change. And these courses are really important for that, bringing the community together, that cohort building. And it, allows you that opportunity to be exposed to what your colleagues are working on, to what faculty members are working on, and to what research scientists from outside the faculty sometimes that will come in and talk about their work as well. So everybody takes those 2 courses. You have 2 more courses to take care of during your first or second year. Courses can bleed into second year as well. And those 2 courses, those elective courses, are really where things start to diverge. If you're in the science stream, you take 2 science courses. If you're in the art stream, you take 2 arts courses. And if you're in between, Master of Environment is sort of that those individuals that can bridge that gap between the human and physical or natural sciences. And those individuals take one science credit and one arts. We'll talk a little bit about core elective courses within our program. We have some that kind of automatically qualify as these elective courses, but because our students come in with such a diverse range of experience and background, there's also opportunity to go outside the department, outside the program, outside the institution. So you can take courses at the U of M as well, if those kind of like help support your learning and sort of like, you know, plug those holes in understanding that you need to in order to move forward. One of our core courses are also really important in terms of helping you develop your proposal, which is sort of like the output from year one. You're going to propose your research and propose your work. And one of the core courses, again, help walk you through that, as well as set you up to be successful in getting scholarship, which we'll talk about in a bit. But then year two is really focusing on research. So you shift gears a little bit away from the coursework, and then you're kind of working independently on your own project, with your supervisor, working closely with your supervisor, as well as your thesis advisory committee. And at the end, we have thesis defense, and that sort of like caps off your experience as a master's student. So we'll go over this really, really quickly. Again, you'll have access to these slides, but this is just showing, again, those required courses. So 7102 is our seminar, and 7103 Research Foundations, which is the one that sets you up with your proposal and sets you up for success when it comes to applying for scholarship. And you're also going to be enrolled in the graduate thesis sort of throughout the 2 years. And then beyond that, yes, you have 6 other credits to take care of from those 2 additional courses, either in science, arts, or one of each. And again, wide open in terms of where we can look to get this experience for you. So again, we'll go through the next couple slides pretty quickly, but it's here for your information. But typical timeline for year one, again, is mostly coursework focus. At this point, you are going to be working with your supervisor already, discussing what your advisory committee is going to look like. And again, this is sort of like a panel of faculty members with relevant experience, which will help guide your work and strengthen your research in the end. And so again, this is usually an interdisciplinary group of individuals that also have different perspectives that can help strengthen your work, essentially. And then you go through the proposal writing sort process at the end of your. No, it's good. You can move. Annual progress report is just like sort of a check-in, but research is really the focus of year two. So here's when you really start to dig into your own work. You start to meet more frequently with your supervisor and your advisory committee. And then finally, you have defense. Please don't come to your defense armed, obviously, but just a little joke here. But so this is always associated with some nerves, but it's a rite of passage, right, as a master's student. And, the defense is really about, ensuring rigor and ensuring that you walk away with the level of understanding for your discipline and those skills that we're trying to build up during those 2 years. So nothing to be afraid of, really. So, we were talking about this before we initiated the panel, but the success of our students have really been overwhelming. I just confirmed before we started that. So important to note right off bat, like this program was founded again, in large part, thanks to Nora, in 2021. So not that long ago, our first grads, so after their 2 years, started defending and started wrapping up in 2023. Some of our original cohort, bled into 2024, no problem at all. But all of our grads from our first cohort have now found employment in relevant fields. And that's really something that's saying something. So our students have been extremely successful in finding, again, we don't have anybody working at Subway or anything like that. They've all found employment in relevant fields. So here's just a small list of examples of where our students have found employment, and I'm sure Wolf and Anas will both speak to their own experience, but we have some individuals who are still in the province and even still in the institution, managing labs and taking on the responsibility of steering their own research or steering a research program. We have a few students, 2 or 3, I believe, who work for Manitoba Hydro now in various capacities. We have some individuals working in private industry, in consultancies, in NGOs like Ducks Unlimited in this list. We have a few students who have found employment with government organizations, Natural Resource Canada, Fisheries and Oceans. We have policy analysts. I think a couple recent grads work for the Manitoba Métis Federation now. Wolf, who's on the call, working in Los Alamos now. And she'll be able to speak to that. And so, yeah, this is a short list, but we have students working in private industry, NGOs, government, and it kind of like spans the spectrum there. So we're really proud of our recent grads for sure. So yeah, this is just kind of a fee breakdown. All this information is on the website as well, but just so you know sort of what you're getting into, annual fees. So for the year for a full-time student is just under $9,000 for a part-time student. So we do have opportunity for students to do and work through the program on a part-time basis as well. Fees are reduced for part-time students, but they have a longer period of time. It's actually over twice as long to complete their program of study. International annual fees, unfortunately, still quite high. So for full-time students, 17,000, approaching 18,000. Following your 2 years, there's some administrative stuff, but you do get a free thesis writing term. And then there are, if you need to continue on, there are continuance fees as well. But this is the bulk of the sort of like fee structure that you'll encounter if you decide to pursue master's, not only in our program here at the UW, but in other programs as well. But so one thing to note is that you're not alone to pay for those fees. The funding that we provide in-house helps cover, well, it covers your tuition and it covers more. And so this funding is coming from within the program itself, so program awards. There's also sort of a training component, so teaching assistantships, which might look like you teaching a lab or something like this, and there's funding associated with that that gets tacked on to your funding package. And then realistically, the bulk of your funding is coming from your supervisor's research grants because you're going to be working on an independent project, but tied to existing funding and existing research program. So the bulk of your funding is coming from your supervisor. There are also opportunities for both internal and external grants or scholarship, I should say, which our students have been extremely successful in securing. I think speaks to the testament of one of our core courses, which helps set up students for success in those areas. So there is opportunity to kind of top up your funding package, but just to give you like a broad or like basic idea, our base funding is about 17,000. So if you are accepted in the program, that's sort of the minimum you could expect. If you're successful in securing funding, either external or internal, then it can kind of go up from there. And this is also something like 17 has been, it all depends on, how much funding we get as a program, what we can allocate, but 17 is kind of the floor. So if you're interested in applying for the MESC program, first and foremost, we have sort of like an internal recruitment that happens ahead of time because each of the students we recruit are tied to a supervisor, tied to a project, and tied to funding, maybe most importantly. So we try our best to keep our website up to date. And so I can vouch that all of the funded master's positions up right now are up to date. And so you can follow that link on the slide there, or I often find myself just Googling MESC funded positions, Winnipeg or something along those lines, and you'll find your way here. But this lists there you go, beautiful. It looks like this. And each of those have drop downs. So some of them you'll see under community energy planning and renewable energies, for example, there are 3 positions when they're in there. And actually, I think one of these positions are looking for 2 students. So please feel free to browse. Each of these, as you browse, have descriptions of the project and also describes how to apply. And so often you are going to be sending some information to the supervisor themselves for vetting. So this one, for example, asks for a CV, transcript, and a writing sample. And so that's your first, the first thing you need to do. So identify whether you're a good fit for any of those funded master's positions. You could also just more broadly browse like our faculty page to see what people are working on. Identify a project or somebody you would like to work with and reach out directly to them and send your letter of intent and whatever else they might. Yeah, so under the people page there, you can find stuff. So yeah, that's your first order of operations is reach out to somebody. And then from there, you would go through the grad studies process of application, the formal process, which I'll turn over to Michaela to cover.
Thank you, Jay. Sorry, I was trying to unmute the mic and finally I found it. So I will just briefly explain everyone the requirements as Jay already mentioned. The minimum requirement for MESC as well as our other graduate programs are 4-year undergraduate degree in relevant fields. For examples, environmental studies, geography, planning, history, and more, which because you will also be meeting with a potential supervisor, you can also discuss with them if your degree is not listed here, if that would be a relevant degree. We are asking for 3 out of 4 point GPA or equivalent to a B or 70%. If you are an international student or a recent permanent resident, we ask for English language requirement. You can find the English language requirement policy on our website. So in order to meet that, you can do various tests, English language tests, and some of them you can take online and provide that test results. If there are also some waivers you can read on the policy. For example, if you have lived in Canada for 10 years, that will exempt you from this requirement, or that you have done 3 years full-time education in Canada in secondary, high school, or post-secondary level. We also have a list of English exempt countries. So you can see them under each letter here. None of our master's degrees or the new PhD degree, we do not require GRE or GMAT. So it is an online application process. I'll show you the link in a bit. And you have to scan and submit your transcripts and your proof of degrees and the proof of your English language requirement and all the other supporting documents, as Jay mentioned, the research proposal, a CV or resume. You have to provide 2 emails on the application portal of your references. And I believe most master's programs prefer academic references. And if you are a permanent resident, you need to submit a scan of your PR card or landing document. I'm going to briefly show you where you can go to apply. So you can go to the graduate studies homepage, or if you're on the University of Winnipeg main page, you can go find grad studies here, or simply Google your Winnipeg grad studies. And on the homepage itself, there's Apply Now button. this page has information on the application period. So we have opened the applications November 1st and the deadline is February 1st. And for the upcoming fall 2025 intake. And then there are program fact sheets, and it's really great to see where the admissions requirements in the fact sheets, on the fact sheet as well. So that's there, and the English language requirement is here as well. And we recently did really brief 1 to 2 minutes videos of how to apply on the portal. So these are two of our master's students who worked as student ambassadors who have done a step-by-step process. So feel free to look at that. And this is the online application portal where you can sign up, get an account, and to submit the application, you don't need any documents. You can complete all the information and submit it. And then you can the next step is pay the fees and upload your documents, which you have time until February 1st. So this is sort of a snapshot of application process. Most of our letters will go in April, but we are starting to issue the letters from January. So if you are an international student, just make sure that you apply as soon as possible and complete your applications as well. And we have 2 professors from the program, and I think they will have some tips for you during the panel discussion as well. This is the contact page for graduate recruitment. And MESC has 2 emails, one for program chair that can be found on the website, on the MESC website, and the generic email if you have any further questions. And you can always contact graduate studies too. If we don't have the answer, we usually send it to the program area. So I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to look at before we go into the panel discussion, I'm going to look at the Q&A. There are no questions. So this is a great panel of alumni and professors. And if you have any burning questions, make sure to add them into Q&A, and I will keep looking at the Q&A in the meantime. Before I start the panel discussion, Jay or Nora, do you have anything else to add about the admissions process?
I would just add 2 things. Number one, just to emphasize what Jay said, the first step is to reach out to a supervisor who you're interested in their work or a project they've advertised. And you should do that before getting into the portal on the graduate studies site, because it's a necessary first step for our program because it's thesis based, and also they'll be able to give you good advice about how to proceed with the portal. The second thing I would say is take a look at the website or those posted positions to get a sense of the breadth of thesis topics that there are. It's really, really broad. In the current cohort, we have 1 student who's working with neighborhood associations on improving the urban canopy in neighborhoods of Winnipeg that don't have great canopy. We have someone who is looking at municipal climate change policy and how well it incorporates concerns about equity. We have a student who's looking at the use of amendments to remediate soil in Flin Flon that's been contaminated by mining. So it's like you have an incredible range. And if you're interested in anything that kind of has to do with the environment or human systems or natural systems, there's a lot of breadth there for you to choose from.
Wonderful. Thank you for that addition, Nora. I have more questions for alumni because you guys are so great and wonderful and all the achievements that you have done. So I'm going to start with 2 of you. Wolf, you are a graduate of the first intake of MESC, and Anas is a graduate of the most recent intake. So great diversity there. So I'm going to ask the first question from Wolf, because you're a little bit senior.
Okay, go for it.
Okay. Um, I I know you probably mentioned this too, where you done your bachelor's at the University of Winnipeg. But one of the questions were actually you provided the tip on this question. Why did you choose a master's program and then rather than going into a program that's going to lead you to a PhD right away?
Yeah, okay. So a little bit of background. I was doing my undergrad at U Winnipeg, and I had this like fantasy of going and studying abroad for grad school. And then the pandemic hit, borders were closed, there was no funding. And I found out that because I had enough credits, the university let me graduate a year early. So I was in this frantic position where suddenly I was graduating and there were almost no opportunities. And I had received an email from this new MESC program that was going to be starting the following fall. And so I was like, okay, well, I have to make some quick decisions here because, I'm about to graduate. I'm not ready to get a job yet. I'm not ready to finish my education. And so I narrowed down to, I like synthesis because I have a background in chemistry, and I like spectroscopy. And the great thing about this program is the diversity of the types of research being done within it, from science to arts and everything in between. And so when I was reading the sheet, I saw Ed Clutis, and then I saw the word spectroscopy, and I was like, okay, maybe there's something here. And keep in mind, during undergrad, I was doing drug design and development, and I was doing a lot of that kind of spectroscopy. And then he was doing Mars stuff. And so I was like, well, spectroscopy is spectroscopy. So the first thing I did was I reached out to Ed. So step number one is sending an email to that person. And so I emailed Ed and I was like, hey, Ed, I have a background in this kind of spectroscopy, and I see you do this other kind of spectroscopy. He responded and he was like, let's meet. And he was like, okay, he's like, spectroscopy is spectroscopy. Do you want to work on Mars, the moon, or asteroids? And on a whim, I was like, let's just go with Mars. And he was like, great, can you start in May? He's like, I'll pay you the summer before the program starts. So I ended up getting a summer job with him. And that's how I ended up in the master's. And so it was sort of like a necessity out of the pandemic. But I was also very aware that there are master's programs that partway through your master's, you can actually convert it into a PhD and then finish with a PhD. And then there are other people who just go straight from undergrad and right into a PhD, which is very common in the US. And this program was just a master's program. And I was kind of like, is this going to be a problem that I'm not doing a PhD? And so it was like some things that I was pondering. And then I was also like, how is my career going to look if I just do this master's and I don't do a PhD? And now I have the answers for those questions because I've finished the program, I've gone into industry, and now I have, perspective and hindsight looking at these questions that I had. And so I started working for Ed, and the Perseverance rover had just landed on Mars, and I started doing my research for him, and I was working with Los Alamos National Lab, LANL, because they built part of Perseverance and Curiosity. And after my master's was coming to a conclusion, I was like, well, what do I do next? And I was looking at PhD programs, and I was like, I'm over being a student, and nothing felt right. And I ended up only applying to one place because the PhD, it just wasn't feeling like the right time. And I didn't want to force myself to continue in education if it wasn't what was best for me. And so LANL ended up providing me a job offer where I ended up in a postmaster's position, which is like the same thing as a postdoc. And they hired me as a postmaster's and then converted me to a permanent employee from there. And I still had the question of, I have a master's here, how much value is a PhD going to provide me? Because at that point, now I'm permanently employed, it would cost me about $500,000 over a 5-year period to get a PhD, which is a huge sacrifice to give up that much money for a PhD. Now, keep in mind, this is a national lab. It is not an academic institution. My employer, because I've managed to form a really good relationship with them, they turned around and said, hey, my boss was like, I'll apply to be an adjunct professor at a nearby university, and I'll strike up a deal with this university so that you can get paid $150,000, your regular salary, and the research that you're already getting paid to do can also double as a PhD. And so now the conversation was different. Now, you know what, if I can keep all the money and get a PhD, now it's worth it for me. So I'm very happy that I did the master's and just the master's and then went and got a job because, quite frankly, I like having money. And now, there's opportunity to do a PhD. Keep in mind, the one thing I've learned with this master's is it is such a massive door opener that I did not appreciate it would be while I was in the program. When I was in the program, I was like, oh, it's just a master's, it's just a master's. And one of the professors corrected me. He goes, no, don't call it just a master's. He's like, it's a master's. And now, I see a lot of value in it because it's opened a lot of doors. And in fact, because I work in the US, a national lab in Canada recently contacted me and they interviewed me last week. And they were interviewing me for a position as a scientist in a national lab in Canada. And I asked this panel of management that was interviewing me, I asked them about the whole PhD versus master's thing. And it turned out that every single person that was on this panel interviewing me only had a master's. And so the master's, given that it is only 2 years, it took me slightly less than 2 years to do it. And it is significantly less expensive than some other degrees. Not only do I think it is a fair deal, I think it's actually a really good deal for how much time it's going to cost you, how much money it's going to cost you, and what you get out of it. So out of all of the things that I've put my time and effort in, this one rewarded me financially the most and gave me the most opportunity. So that is a very long answer as to why the master's PhD thing.
That's excellent. Thank you so much, Wolf. I really appreciate that, the amount of research you have done before starting the master's from the graduate studies, recruitment and admission side. So that's a great example. You are a model applicant. And also, what a great testimonial for the founders and our professors in the program that, to create this much success of alumni. So congratulations, Nora and Jay. Anas, my next question is to you. You're a recent graduate. You're also an international master's student. How is it for you? How did your master's program or when you do your research align with your future career and academic goals, and what are the next steps for you?
Oh yeah, no, I was just thinking about while Wolf was talking about my own experiences as an international student and how as an international student there's an added layer to graduate studies if you're far away from home, 12,000 kilometers from home. Talking about the sea borders, not the land. Anyway, so just thinking about that, there are some very important considerations if you're applying for a graduate program abroad. One of them is your ability to kind of navigate the culture shock that comes with, and that culture shock is not just academic, it is everything around you. And I think my biggest consideration in that space was just thinking about what are the ways in which I can navigate this efficiently. And I thought that probably a small class size, a close-knit community is going to be super helpful, and that was a very important consideration for me. But just talking about my background, I'm trained as a lawyer in India. Back in India, I went to Amity Law School in Mumbai. And then after law school, I started working in a think tank on public policy. It was still aligned with much of the law work that I was doing. But then I decided I really don't see myself as doing just law. Like I need an interdisciplinarity, but I can still continue to contribute my legal understanding, right? And I was looking for programs that gave me that flexibility. And I went to the website, the UNEPEG, and like there's some keywords on the website: human environment interactions, interdisciplinarity, your ability to choose your thesis. And that was quite fascinating to me. So I got in touch with, so I started writing emails, as Jay was talking about in his presentation. I was like, okay, let's write emails. But it's also important for international students. Like sometimes we're very nervous about ourselves, and like writing emails to potential supervisors who do not look like us might not be very, it is by itself a very nerve-wracking experience. What will they think about ourselves and all this? So I think navigating that was important for me. And I wrote to many people, and quite surprisingly, just based on my experience in South Asia, the response was in 48 hours, by the way, most of the people I wrote to. And that's how and I also wrote to Nora to help me, find someone this is my profile and this is how I do it. And Nora said, you know what, one of my colleagues, and he was not listed on the website, Kirit Patel, by the way, now he is. I mean, he might be interested in that. And then, of course, we struck a conversation with Kirit, and there was no going back from there. So that is how I had him as my supervisor, and along with Professor Alan Dedak, who was also my supervisor. But my research was focused in India. So, one important part of this is, and there's another position available on the website for research work in India, that studying at UW does not mean that you confine your research to the borders of Manitoba, right? It is, academia is beyond that. So my research was in Gujarat, in India, and I was working on human rights in the dried fish economy. But my classmates, it was very interesting. The people I was taking courses with in the MESC program were doing things like planetary science, working on butterflies, working on Dutch elm disease. And all of those things, I think, gave me a very interesting perspective to look at my own research, just having those conversations. And for me, going beyond law, that was a very important part. And I see myself at the intersection of, academia, think tanks, and governments, like somewhere in the policy space. And I think the way this has panned out has really helped me to understand. So my current job is at the University of Manitoba, and I'm working as a research project manager with the same SHOC partnership grant, which is the Dried Fish Matters project. And I'm able to see research from the other side as well, not just from a graduate student side, but also thinking about managing research and how to do that in an academic setting, but also an administrative setting. So I'm enjoying this experience. But in the long run, I think my ideal career space will be somewhere in the policy space, where I can apply all of these experiences. I think it's going to enrich my expectation, and my hope and my ambition is that it's going to enrich my career going forward. But did I answer your question? As I went on and a different wavelength, did I?
I think you definitely answered, but I love all the background that you brought to it. And I am also an international student from many, many years ago. I really appreciate that your answer about how you got to contribute to your home communities through your master's program too. So that's wonderful, and congratulations to you again, Anas. I'm going to go back to our professors now, and both Anna's and Wolf's success. I think you are really proud of that. And I know that MESC is known to provide that great support to their students from that first email, as Anas mentioned, 48 hours. And, sometimes we want to give a little bit of grace for our professors because they're so busy, and we kind of wait for okay, a week or 2 weeks and a little nudge. So that's wonderful to hear, that great turnaround time. I don't know how you guys do that. So what's the model within your department to support your students towards this success?
Nora, did you want to? I think I've talked enough already.
Sure. Just as an aside, I've been trying to answer the questions in the Q&A as they come up, so keep putting them in there. And you could take a look at the questions that have been answered.
Thank you so much, Nora. I thought I wanted to thank you before I go into the question, because I'm like, oh my God, I need to also pay attention to these wonderful, insights, and then go to Q&A. And I went, and Nora had answered everything. So thank you so much.
No problem. These were mostly questions that were in my wheelhouse to answer. I'll also just say it's so great to hear Wolf and Anas, both of your reflections on the program being a little ways out. And I think it's there's lots of things in life that are like this, where you can kind of, once you're 6 months, a year, 18 months out of something, you can look back and kind of reflect on what was particularly valuable or what worked well. In terms of the ways in which we support students in the program, the first thing is we support the students financially. So as Jay mentioned, all of the positions in the MESC program are funded positions. And so if you're accepted into the program, you'll receive a funding package that consists of funding from a few different sources, some university funding, funding from your supervisor's research grant, funding from a TA position, and potentially funding from scholarships, which you win yourself. And so we're not going to accept you unless we have that funding package in place. And you will have the amount of that funding and the kind of different sources that it comes from in the offer letter. So you'll be able to see that, and the funding is guaranteed for 2 years. But we don't just support people financially, we try to support them in a variety of other ways. I think one of the things that can be a real challenge for students entering a graduate program is this is an opportunity to do research on your own that is your independent project that you take ownership of and shape and develop the methods and analyze the results and write it up. And that can seem really daunting because you start on the first day in September and you say, okay, my goal is to write this 150-page thesis and I don't know where to start. So we really try to support you in developing all of the skills that it takes to go into being a successful researcher and to write a successful thesis. Some of that is through the coursework. The coursework is designed to help you build your research skills, both sort of explicit technical skills like how to do literature searches, how to develop a research question, how to write a proposal that's compelling. But also we try to support you in being able to work in an interdisciplinary space, because if you're going to work in the environmental field, you're going to end up working with people from a variety of different backgrounds. That's just kind of the way that the field works. We're not going to solve any environmental problems by working by ourselves in our own kind of disciplines. And so we put you in this cohort and you get to work with people like Wolf who are doing these planetary science type of projects, and people like Anas who are doing these justice-oriented projects, in his case about a resource economy in India. And so you develop skills to be able to explain your work and put your work in context for people who aren't specialists. And then your supervisor supports you through the thesis process. You're not by yourself. I always say to students, this is not like an undergraduate class where you're doing a test and I'm expecting you to have the answer. This is like an answer that we're figuring out together. And different students need different support with different things, whether that's designing the field work, figuring out how many samples to take and when and from where, whether that's identifying human participants if you're doing research that involves interviews or surveys or focus groups, help with the analysis of the data, help with putting it into the literature context, help with writing the thesis, help with defending the thesis. And then I think part of the reason our students have had a lot of success with jobs is we also support people in finding jobs. And that's not a formal part of the program, but everyone who's involved is always looking out for opportunities and helping to support people as they finish their degree and move on in whatever field they want to work in.
Can I add something to that? Because I don't think.
Thank you, Nora.
Thank you. I think it needs to be stated very clearly how much support there is in this program compared to what I've seen other people go through in different institutions and different programs. I worked for Ed Clutis because that's who I matched with. I still, a year and a half out from my master's, now I lead projects and he is a collaborator on the projects that I lead. But I want to say that one of the advantages to the MESC program being so multidisciplinary is that it is a microcosm for the real world working in industry. In the MESC program, you are working with a diverse group of people, and you have to learn to work together from vastly different perspectives. And in the real world here at LANL, I do that every day. And so that helped me prepare to work with many different perspectives and many different backgrounds. And that is one of the very unique things of MESC, because it is not a one-track program. You get that from there. I also want to say, this just slipped my mind here. The ability to lead your own project. What I was doing for Ed, it was the perfect balance of independent and supported. And now I'm in the real world here at LANL in my office, and I'm leading 3 projects. And the work that I did for Ed really helped me go in prepared to, do this, big job. And so I think the experience that I got being independent, but having an incredible amount of support, helped set me up for this. And so the support from the MESC program didn't end when I graduated from the MESC program. In fact, the interview I had last week for the National Lab came from Ed. And so he is still looking out for me. He is still sending me opportunities. Maybe I want them, maybe I don't. He still sends stuff my way. And he is now my collaborator on my research. And I'm happy that that didn't end after graduation.
Wonderful. Thank you, Wolf. Jay, would you like to add to the same question about the support or add anything else for what Nora mentioned for the department's support?
I think most was said, but I would just add that, yeah, it's your supervisor is going to be your first, your home. Like they're going to be the ones that you're going to be working most closely with, but your thesis advisory committee is also there to provide support, and the program itself, the chair, is there to help you navigate those relationships as well. So yeah, I think there's all sorts of opportunity there to get support, and different students are going to require different levels of support and require support in different ways. And so yeah, no, I think everything has been said for sure.
Wonderful. So I am going to ask our alumni a question. I do have a few questions. We are also frantically answering our questions on the Q&A. Thanks, Anas and Nora again. And so my next question to our alumni is, Anas, you talk a little bit about it, the support from your small group or small community, and especially from the international student perspective, we are all coming from far, far away from our homes. What are the other things that helped, other than your program support from your peers and the other parts of the university, and what activities you did to make your master's experience wholesome?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I've been reflecting on that experience ever since I graduated, just thinking about what was it that made it so easy for me. And when I say it made it easy for me, I'm, taking into consideration all of those cultural shocks that I'm talking about. And then, as I remember in the research foundation course, we called it hidden curriculum as well, that international students have to navigate. So to be in a close-knit program, and in fact, we were still the biggest cohort, but still very close-knit in the sense 13 people. You're really, what I realized is like everyone in the program who was with me, who was, from Winnipeg or from like Canada, they're trying to help each other. And we were like 3 international students, and there was this support that was so visible. Like, and even the professors, like my first day, I remember vividly, my class was with Nora and Ryan. And like from the first day onwards, there was this very clear support that, we're here to support you, we're support. And like there was, usually you sometimes think about big programs, you think it's all competitive. But I think the good part about this is since we were all doing our own things, we did not have to compete with each other, but to support each other, right? Like the different projects that we were working with. So that was quite fascinating. But at the same time, the program gave us opportunities to also socialize outside of the classroom. So we had these bowling events, we had these potlucks. And I think that was such an interesting experience to talk to each other beyond the classroom as well, and to know each other. And I'm sure international students in my batch, like three of us, we could attest to the kind of supports we've had. So we'd look to our professors, to our classmates, for support beyond the classroom as well. So the activities, and part of that also, like, because you're on a small campus, I want to reiterate that a lot, because I think for me as an international student, that like that small university environment feels very safe. I was not willing to take that big dive into a very big campus and then get like lost in that space. So now I probably am equipped for that, but like that first step is super important. I think the campus itself helped me in like just feeling more significant in that space. Yeah, if it makes sense.
Yeah, thank you. I see some international students on this audience right now, and some registered. So I think that it's great insights to share with anyone who's a little bit, scared of coming into a new country, new program. My next question is to you, Wolf. I will ask the same question. What was your experience? I know you're very focused, very goal-oriented on what you wanted to do, but what makes it fun for you, this university experience?
So actually, completely the opposite. When there was like one of the prepared questions, which was, how did this program align with your future goals? The funny thing was, I didn't have clear future goals. And so for me, the fun in this was just going on an adventure and seeing where it leads me without having this expectation of this is exactly the point that I want to get to. And so my enjoyment in doing this program was the fact that, it was a chaotic time during the pandemic. And here I had, this new adventure I was going on instead of being stuck at home, and I never thought about operating the Mars rovers. I never thought about being a Martian scientist, but that's where it led me. And so I think I was just very open to seeing what could come from this. And that, for me, I enjoyed that. I enjoyed not approaching it as this strict, I'm going to do A, B, C, D, and I'm going to get perfect grades on this. And at the end, I'm going to have this perfect product. That's not what happened. And so, yeah, for me, the fun in it was just the adventure of going on this journey with Ed. Operating the Mars rover at first was very stressful, but then I found the enjoyment and fun in that. So that was also fun. But the people, like, I think fondly of many of the first cohort of the MESC students, very people that were vastly different from me. And I came to really appreciate the different personalities and the different perspectives. So for me, that was the fun part. Did I answer the question?
Yes, great. I feel like every time you guys answer, I feel like I should have changed this question to be better, because the answers are much better than the questions, we put. So that's amazing. And I want to also add, when I emailed Wolf and Anas, the responses were, I was giving it a week or two, but I was like pleasantly surprised, like how fast you got back. Like, I would love to talk to future students. I would love to be part of this panel. And on top of that, bonus was, here's a question you can ask me, Michaela. And I think these are really helpful for potential students. So thank you so much. And it really is a testament to the community that you have within MESC, past, present, and future students. So thank you again. I have a question for Nora and Jay. I think part of this question is also on the Q&A. One of the students are asking, what are some tips to convince a supervisor? And I'm going to add on to it, so you have to remember both parts. If you can talk a little bit about the selection process, because you are choosing these wonderful students to be part of it, and I know you're getting quite a bit of interest. So if you can speak to how to convince and how do you choose your group.
Yeah, maybe I'll just get started and I'll turn it over to Nora, because Nora, manages quite a large research program and can speak more to experience. But I don't know if I like the word convince, in that, like, if you have relevant experience, if you're passionate, if you are clearly engaged, Again, I kind of already mentioned, but if you have relevant background that fits well with the program in question or with the work that the supervisor does, then it's less about convincing and just reaching out and saying, hey, I'm interested in so and so. This is my background. I'd love to chat about working further with you. And that's just where it starts, really. So yeah, we are looking for the right students, but at the same time, it's more about just starting to make those connections. And as long as we're looking for people who are passionate um, and that clearly want to chase these questions down and tackle these large issues that we're all passionate about, right? So yeah, I'll toss it over to Nora to talk more practically about the process, I guess.
Sure. Just to say, in terms of the initial email reaching out to a supervisor, faculty members in our program and actually at all Canadian universities get dozens of inquiries a day, to be frank. We get a lot of emails looking for graduate positions. And so a few things you can do to make your email stand out and to make sure that it gets a response. Read the ad on the MESC website carefully and make sure that you're following the instructions that are there. And there'll be different instructions for the different positions in terms of who to email, what to include in the initial email. Many of them have they want you to put something in the subject line to make sure that they see it. So look at that carefully and make sure that you have read about the project, read about the supervisor, maybe read a little bit of their work, and that you're tailoring your email to the position and to the supervisor's work, as opposed to the emails that are more difficult to respond to and get responded to more slowly are ones where you send a generic email to kind of 17 different people and you just change the name at the top. It's pretty easy to tell the difference between those two types of inquiries. So read the ad carefully, research the supervisor and the project carefully, and be ready to identify why you are a good match to the project. And I'm really happy to hear that I answered and asked your email quickly, because you have to be a bit patient because the email volume can be really high. And so it can be difficult to get through.
Yeah, 48 hours was my experience, but that's not an expectation that you should have, just to clarify. It can take time, but they'll get back. Yeah,
I also waited less than 48 hours, and then like 3 days later, 4 days later was the actual interview. So it happened very fast.
Yeah, and my guess, although I don't remember either of your emails in particular, my guess is that both of those emails were really clear why you were a good match, and that's why they got responded to quickly. In terms of the selection process, so again, identifying the supervisor is the first step, because without a supervisor, you're not going to be considered for admission to the program. And so you need to talk to the supervisor about the project and about the process, both at the University of Winnipeg, but if there's anything else that they would like, typically I set up a time to talk to students, whether that's via Zoom, if they're remote, or in person, if they're in Winnipeg and that's possible, to get a sense of both the student's interests and also so the student can get a sense of the work that we do in our research group. But different people will ask for different things. Some will ask for writing samples, some will ask for research proposals. There'll be a few different things. My second tip, after identifying a supervisor and being really clear about figuring out what the good match is between you and their project, is to get your application in by the deadline, because if it's in by February 1st, then it will for sure be considered with the round of funded projects that exist. And that deadline comes up quickly, even though it's only December 18th today. February 1st is around the corner. And I guess the last thing I'll say about the selection process is you want to put together a good application, and it's important to choose people to write reference letters who can speak to your experience and your background, because sometimes you have other things going on in your life, other experiences, other research experiences, other work experiences that don't come through in the formal application materials, but your referee can really speak to that. And so Michaela said academic references are usually preferred. I'd say that's definitely true, but if you don't have two academic references, work references or other people from other parts of your life can also be acceptable. The two academic references I know can be difficult for any undergraduate student, but particularly if you did a portion of your degree remotely. Sometimes people haven't had that chance to form relationships with faculty members.
I guess, sorry, I'll just add really quick, while we're on the subject of getting emails answered quickly, we do have a few different ways you can get in touch with myself, or like if you have general program inquiries. We have the general MESC email. All of this you can find on our website, the MESC Chair email. But honestly, if you can find my personal UW email, j.my@uwinnipeg. It's also on the website. I monitor that one very closely and I respond quite quickly if it comes in on that. So pro tip to those of you who are watching or attending the panel.
Jay, I put your address, or I put the MESC address in a response to someone who was asking about getting in touch with Anas and Wolf. I think if you contact Jay or we could put you in touch with either Anas or Wolf or other students or former students because that's a really good way of getting a sense of what the program is about. And they have a clearer view of the experience of being an MESC student than a faculty member who is, doesn't have that same experience.
That's a really good point. And on our People's page, we have all of our current and former graduate students listed. And so that is also a strategy, is you can reach out to, not to get into a lab, but if you're considering working with a supervisor, considering getting folded into an existing research program, you can reach out to current students to talk a little bit about their experience to make sure that you're a good fit. So that's another resource for sure.
Thank you so much for that, Nora and Jay. We are 10 minutes over. I don't want to stop the webinar because the information and insights, they're all great, but I will. But before we leave, I want to ask one more question from Anas and Wolf, because you went through the application process and you mentioned a lot of these things already, the tips. You are also a student, but if anyone's watching who are a potential student for the program, what would be your, one other advice for them? Anas, would you like to go first?
I just say, if you're really looking for an interdisciplinary program, and if you think that you have the skills, or the experience, it's good to take that leap of faith and write that first email. And not to judge yourself before you do that. Sometimes, for example, in the fact sheet, I don't know my degree, the law degree was not mentioned in the program, but I reached out and like, hey, I'm a lawyer. Does it qualify me? And then things like these, just write it. Don't self-reject yourself, but also make sure that it's not a stretch when you're like aligning your interest to like that of a supervisor. Just that.
Amazing. Well,
Can I just say on that point, it's really important what Anas just said. Even if you're not sure that your background and experience totally matches up, send the email, because we really look for folks who have the interest and the aptitude and the enthusiasm to be successful in the program, as opposed to people who have a particular degree or come from a particular place. We have people with a really wide variety of backgrounds who are really successful in our program.
Thank you, Nora.
The one piece of advice I would say that served me well in my master's, served me well so far here at Lano, and also served me well in my interview with the lab that I interviewed with in Canada, is just be honest and authentic. just show who you are. If you're like, just be yourself and be honest. When I contacted Ed, I was like, yeah, I know nothing about VisIR. I didn't say that. I said, I know a lot about nuclear magnetic resonance spectroscopy and mass spectrometry. I'm willing to learn the types of spectroscopy that you do. So I was saying what I do know, not what I don't. And it was his call to decide, was what I know enough overlap with what he was doing that, I was worth taking on. And he decided that yes, it was. And so always highlighting what you know and always being honest about it. Just never bullshit somebody who knows more than you, because they'll always call you out on it. When I was in an interview last week for another national lab, the comment that they said to me during the interview was, wow, you are a really honest person. And being somebody that, other people see you as honest and reliable can go really far. So just show your true self and be honest about it. And that's my main piece of advice here.
Amazing. So the title of this webinar is Shaping Sustainable Futures. So as a non-scientist, I applaud all of you for doing that. This is a wonderful program, and thank you all for joining and, talking with our panelists. As you can see, the passion and the excitement for the support in the program. So look forward to see some of you in fall 2025. All the best with your applications. And happy holidays and happy 2025. Thank you so much, everyone. And thank you so much, panelists, Wolf, Anas, Jay, and Nora
Thank you for
again.
inviting me.
Thank you. Have a happy holiday season.